I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting for July 27th, 2026. Please rise as you are able and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll of the members?
Rachel Hulteen.
Present.
Dan Larson.
Present.
Kathleen Martell.
Here.
Scott Ohm.
Here.
Mike Okada.
Here.
Patrick Quinn.
Present, Madam
Thank you.
Clerk.
Jenny Snell.
Present.
Susan Wood.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Councilors, in your packet, we have City Council meeting minutes from July 13th, 2026, and special study session notes from July 13th, 2026. I know that Councilor Martell, I'll recognize you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I previously today requested updates to the minutes of the July 13th City Council meeting, item number 5, the funding of the equity audit. My request was to provide a more complete recap of that discussion. The item did pass on July 13th with a 5-3 vote after a very thorough discussion amongst City Council, and I believe the initial minutes did not capture all of the pertinent points, both for and against the issue. I worked with our clerk and do believe the amended minutes that were provided earlier today do reflect the complete discussion and content for our public record.
Okay. Thank you for doing that beforehand and updating that. Councilors, are there any other notes or changes to be made to the minutes? Thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda for the evening? Seeing none, we will go ahead and move on to I can have the Breton family join me up here. Thank you guys for being here today. Go ahead and just join me. Last month, I had the honor of selecting Dominic Breton as the very first recipient of the Mayor's Community Champion Award. We plan to recognize him at our June 22nd City Council meeting for this incredible commitment to Wheat Ridge. Sadly, Dominic passed away before we had the chance to present him with the award. Like so many of us, I knew Dominic as someone who was always there. If there was a community event, Dominic was there. If there was a local business that needed support, Dominic was there. If someone had an idea that would make Wheat Ridge a better place, Dominic was the first one to raise his hand and say, "How can I help?" Dominic believed in this community with his whole heart. Through his leadership with the Wheat Ridge Chamber, the Kiwanis, and countless other organizations, he brought people together, built relationships, and reminded all of us that the strength of the city comes from neighbors who care about one another. There are people who leave a mark on a community, and there are people who become part of the story. Dominic was one of those people. His kindness, generosity, and his genuine love of Wheat Ridge touched so many lives. On behalf of the Wheat Ridge City Council, our staff, and our entire community, I want to extend our deepest condolences to Dominic's family and everyone who loved him. We grieve with you, but we're also incredibly grateful that we had the opportunity to know him and to learn from his example. Tonight is my privilege to present the Mayor's Community Champion Award to Dominic's family in recognition of his life dedicated to serving others. It's also my honor to announce that beginning this month, the Mayor's Community Champion Award will forever be known as the Dominic Breton Community Champion Award. Every month, when we recognize someone who is making a Wheat Ridge a better place, we'll also remember the man who set the standard. Dominic showed us what it means to serve, to lead, and to care deeply about your community. His legacy isn't just something that we'll remember, it's something that we'll continue to build on. Thank you. And now we'll go from celebrating Dominic to Dominic's absolute favorite thing. If I could have Kirsten Litz and Bruce Simmons join me up here. Tonight we have a proclamation for the Wheat Ridge Kiwanis. Whereas Kiwanis International is one of the largest service organizations in the world, with more than 430,000 members of all ages and abilities in more than 80 nations and geographic areas. And whereas the members of the Kiwanis Club of Wheat Ridge are devoted to improving the world one child and one community at a time by seeking to give primacy to the human and spiritual rather than the material values of life. Whereas, in addition to improving the lives of children in Wheat Ridge and in the communities around the world, Kiwanis Club members promote the development of community leaders, positive role models, intercultural understanding and cooperation, and opportunities for fellowship, personal growth, professional development, and community services. And whereas the first Kiwanis Club started its service in Detroit, Michigan in 1915, and the Kiwanis Club of Lakeside was formed on May 29th, 1958, and was later renamed the Kiwanis Club of Wheat Ridge. And whereas the service provided by the Kiwanis Club of Wheat Ridge will continue to have a positive impact on our community and citizenship. And therefore, I, Corey Stites, Mayor of Wheat Ridge, and the Wheat Ridge City Council, hereby call upon all residents of Wheat Ridge to render support to the members of this organization and make themselves aware of Kiwanis International, whose members this day are providing meaningful service to our homes, schools, and community. A witness thereof on this 27th day of July, 2026.
The Wheat Ridge Kiwanis Club meets every Thursday at 7:30 a.m. at the Wheat Ridge Visitor Center, Chamber of Commerce, near 38th and Teller for breakfast and our weekly meeting. We welcome guests and community members. Everyone is invited to come and see what we're all about. Our club is proud to be deeply involved in supporting local schools and community programs. At Stevens Elementary, we partner closely with the school liaison to support the hub, assist with Feed the Future, lead after-school clubs, recognize students through the quarterly Ring of Fire Awards, and lend a hand whenever needed. At Everett Middle School, we sponsor a Kiwanis Builders Club that works alongside the staff to support the hub, participate in International Night, and contribute to a variety of school and community events. At Wheat Ridge High School, we proudly support the Kiwanis Key Club and have awarded annual scholarships to deserving students for many years. Beyond our schools, we are active partners with the City of Wheat Ridge Parks and Rec Department. You'll find us volunteering at community favorites such as the Easter egg hunt, Carnation Festival, Movie in the Park, Performance in the Park, and many other events throughout the year. Speaking of Performance in the Park, this Wednesday, we'll be firing up the grill and serving hot dogs and brats for attendees. Be sure to stop by and say hello. Making a difference, supporting our youth, and strengthening our community is what Kiwanis is all about. We'd love for you to join us.
Thank you all for being here this evening. We will move on to our public's right to speak. Residents will have 3 minutes to speak on any topic not on the agenda item or not on the agenda this evening. When you come up, please spell your last name. Let us know whether you live or work in Wheat Ridge, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. On the clerk's desk there, there's 3 lights. The green light means you have plenty of time. When it starts blinking, you've got about a minute. When it gets to yellow, you've got about 30 seconds to wrap it up. And when it gets to red, please go ahead and wrap up your comments. We have one person signed up to speak tonight, and it is Dan Kanukas. Please join us up here, sir, and you can have your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kukas, K-U-C-K-E-S, and I live in Wheat Ridge. I want to start out by talking about an organization that I've helped with for about 12 years. It's called Adaptive Adventures, and it gets disabled veterans and children out doing things like boating, rock climbing, and cycling. Some of the veterans have one leg amputated or even both legs amputated. Sometimes we have to help those individuals onto their bikes and lock their feet into the pedals. At that point, of course, they're in a rather vulnerable position if anything were to happen. Now, at the past events that I've helped at, the protection that I've anticipated has been, if there's a mechanical problem with the bike or something, the chain comes off, get a flat tire, if they get stranded, something like that. And in the boating events, of course, the possibility that a kid falls off the boat and we have to do lifeguarding types of rescue. However, there's more recently another concern that I want to address. I have invited and made some initial invitations to have an event here at the conservation area, which is a favorite nature area of mine since the 70s, really. I've biked there since the 90s. Now, I want to thank the council for 3 years ago promptly updating the ordinances to allow bicycles used as ADA mobility devices. The problem is when the signs for years have been accidentally misleading. There's a sign that's about 15 inches high. It says, big symbol, no bicycles, about 15 inches high. Then in lettering about 1.25 inches, it says, except ADA mobility devices. Now that's a little bit ambiguous. Does that include bicycles? Does it not include bicycles? When you go to the website, you can see that it includes bicycles, but the sign under that, which was meant to clarify that, is a sign that has a picture of a wheelchair. Now, 100% of the people polled have said the sign looks like it reads, no bicycles, but wheelchairs are accepted. That's not the law. That does not fulfill the ADA requirements. And if I bring veterans and children using bicycles to the conservation area, then they are likely to be subjected to the same violent reception that I have had there. Thank you.
Thank you. We have nobody else signed up to speak on public's right to speak. We'll also take comments on our study session tonight. Mr. Kukas, did you signed up on both? Did you want to speak under both tonight? Did you want to speak under the study session tonight as well? On the topic of the study session? Okay. All right. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. All right. So we have nobody signed up to speak, so we will move on to our first agenda item, and we will go to Councilor Quinn.
Now I'm paying for all those times I didn't get to introduce anything. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce item number 1 tonight, a motion awarding a contract to LG Contractors in the amount of $278,129.25 with a contingency amount of $27,812.93 for a total approved amount of $305,942.18 for the 2026 residential concrete program. The issue, 9 bids were received in response to the city's invitation for bids to complete the 2026 residential concrete program project. The lowest responsive bidder is LG Contractors. It is recommended that the city enter a contract with LG Contractors to perform the work for the 2026 residential concrete program.
Thank you. This is a motion for the council. Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this?
Yes, our Public Works Director, Mr. Kisselman, has a little bit more to add.
Thank you for having me this evening. Yeah, I'll just cover a few points that are included in this. This is our annual maintenance program, but it includes a couple other things. It includes some ADA stuff and our neighborhood management traffic program as well. So we assessed all the sidewalk in Zone 3, which is, if you're not familiar with the zones, that's generally located in District 1. We're still going by zones, which is helpful because we can minimize the mobilization costs. So this year's program will be in Zone 3. There are some additional areas throughout the year that we've talked about. I think there's a Kipling and 32nd. We spoke about that, about an ADA ramp. There's a Kipling as you're driving southbound before you get to the bridge and the rec center. And you'll see there's a patch there now. There's a really bad piece of gutter and sidewalk. We'll repair that. And then we've had a couple residents email us from years past that have said, well, they've been on the books for years, and so we're going to address some of those as well. So those are the additional things that'll be covered under this program. There are four ADA ramps plus the one on Kipling, so there's 5 total. There'll be 6 speed humps as part of the neighborhood traffic management program, and some additional things that they're going to imply in those areas. Those areas are Nelson from 35th to 36, 41st from Harlan to Pierce, Quay from 28th to 41st, Teller from 26th to 29th, and Teller from 29th to 32nd. That is this year's program, and staff recommends approval of the motion. And I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. We have nobody signed up to speak from the public tonight, so we'll go to questions from council. Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. The first, can you clarify the funds that we're approving tonight? Are they 2J funds or are they general funds?
The funds this evening are for 2J for this year. The neighborhood maintenance traffic program, that portion has its own CIP line item, so those will be attributed back to the capital projects fund.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to clarify, is that we're not using 2J for the neighborhood. And then the second question I have, and I'll just use my own street. A lot of the speed humps and speed bumps that have been put in over time are not in great shape. The ones that are on my street, which is Allison from 44th to 47th, 48th, like the arrows have all faded away. And so like, as you are doing this type of maintenance, are you looking at old traffic calming investments to see if they need to be updated or refreshed in any way?
I think part of the program this year is that the engineering division did look at some of those things, so they are going to put leading stripes on some of the newer speed humps that don't have that, and then they're going to check how that impacts the traffic calming in those neighborhoods. Public Works doesn't specifically do the traffic calming program. That is held under community development, but we can certainly pass that information along to our traffic team and see what they're looking at. But I know that they do the program, and then it usually takes 1 or 2 years before they get it into the budget.
Okay.
And then as we go through, even with our mill and overlay, if there's a speed hump on there, and I think we actually have 1 or 2 in this year's program, we're replacing those, and we're replacing those to the new standard.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because the one on my street, like, you can't see the arrows. You can't always tell that there's a speed hump there. So what I'm hearing from you is once they're installed, they get programmed into Public Works for maintenance after a couple of years and are monitored and evaluated that way.
Yeah, and we do some internal striping. We do, like crosswalks and turn arrows. But I can talk to the team and see what we can do about additional striping at some of those speed humps. In next year's proposed budget, we will have striping throughout the city, and so we can certainly add striping into a contracted service at that time as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff, I don't know who would answer this particular question, but is the lowest bid the automatic winner?
No, it's the lowest responsive bidder. And so we checked the numbers and compared past and just ensure that those are, complete. And then we reach out and check references as well.
Thanks, Director Kisselman. What and how long is the warranty on the workmanship work or materials on something like this?
We're redoing our standards and specifications, which there's currently not a unified standards and specifications. I mean, we're looking for a 2-year warranty on this work. And that would be under our right-of-way permit.
Awesome, thank you. One last one. Are there inspections done by the city on the work during and afterwards?
There certainly are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. And Director Kisselman, on the list of the sidewalk areas that we're going to look at this year, I didn't catch, were you able to include the frontage road from Garrison to Independence, that little stretch there?
That portion is under a different contract. That's our sidewalk gap program. And so this is our maintenance program. This just addresses trip hazards, cracked stones, and just replacing in kind. We're not redoing, like if the sidewalk is 3 feet, we're not making it 5 feet. We're just, if a stone, if there's a deformation or high, forgot the word, but if it's a tripping hazard, that's what this program addresses.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? All right, seeing none, I will ask Counselor Quinn for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to award a contract to LG Contractors for the amount of $278,129.25 with a contingency amount of $27,812.93 for the total approved amount of $305,942.18 for the 2026 residential concrete program.
I have a second by Counselor Ohm. Do we have discussion on the motion?
Yes.
Counselor Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a tradesman for my day job, when I see almost $100,000 left on the table, my spidey senses come up a little bit. And I worry that this is a bid, and I shouldn't say this, I worry that we have a lot of 1099 folks that are under this, that are going to be employed underneath of this. And those are individual, you can be a laborer and show up and be a 1099 guy. And what I saw last year when we were out walking on the trail for campaigning, and we kind of talked about some of these, some of the residents were worried about the cleanup. It was kind of messy. It was the concrete, the color didn't match, but I know concrete fades and that'll be a little bit different. But some of it already started spalling. The trucks and the individuals, they didn't have company names on them. The dump trucks didn't have anybody's name on it. And so I worry they're all the 1099 guys. And not that I have a thing against those, but they're not covered by OSHA. The company, the general contractor doesn't have to worry about OSHA. They don't pay Social Security tax. They don't pay state and federal taxes, Medicare, all that stuff. It's on to the 1099 guys. And I think it's a cheaper way to do business. And in the future, I'd like to look at how we can award bids that don't have a majority of the work going to 1099 folks. Not that I don't like them, it's just that they're not employees. They don't have safety stuff. They're not subject to like some OSHA things. It's kind of a strange area when I did my research. So that's all the comments I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments? No more discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
8 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next agenda item, and I will recognize Mayor Pro Tem Holteen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to go into executive session for a conference with the city manager, city attorney, special counsel, and appropriate staff under Charter Section 5.71 and CRS 24-6-4024B and E for legal advice and to instruct negotiators on specific legal questions in regards to a contract dispute between City of Wheat Ridge and Concrete Works, Colorado, involving the Improve Wadsworth project. I further move to return to the open meeting at the conclusion of the executive session to take any actions deemed necessary.
I have a second by Counselor Ohm. Do we have discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Thank you. 8 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you. We will be back. our meeting for July 27, 2026, and I will go to our city attorney for a message about our executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the council's time during the executive session. It was helpful. I do not need any action from the council at this time. Any action that I would need in the future will bring back to the council for its consideration, but no further tonight. So based on that, it's, in my opinion, you may now adjourn the regular meeting and proceed on to your study session.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. And that's exactly what we'll do. We will go ahead and adjourn our council meeting for July 27, 2026, and we will open our study session for July 27, 2026. We have a couple of agenda items tonight. First one is our round 2 of 2026 polling results, and our second is the Wilmore Davis draft purchase agreement. We will go directly to our first agenda item. Mr. Goff, do you have a staff presentation for this?
I do. Give me 1 second to get my computer back in. Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, moving on to a couple other items this evening. Tonight's discussion represents the culmination of nearly 2 years of work. During that time, we've completed city plan, updated our facilities master plan, identified our long-term infrastructure needs, conducted extensive community engagement, held our capital planning workshop this last spring, and now completed a second statistically valid community survey. Together, those efforts have provided us with a clear understanding of both our needs and our residents' priorities. Tonight is not about deciding whether these projects are important. I think we all believe that there is broad agreement that they are. The question before us tonight is whether we should give the Wheat Ridge voters the opportunity to decide how they want to fund those priorities. One thing has become increasingly clear: our general funds simply cannot absorb these investments while maintaining the level of services our residents expect. We have aging streets, sidewalks, public facilities, our Anderson Pool, City Hall and police facilities, and important community properties that may only be available once. Waiting does not make these projects less expensive. It makes them significantly more expensive, and doing nothing is not a free option. Ultimately, tonight is not about whether each of us personally supports every project. It is about whether we believe the community should have that opportunity to decide. The polling suggests there is a credible path to success. The projects are consistent with years of community planning. The financial need is real. And without a dedicated funding source, many of these investments will continue to be delayed while costs continue to increase. So rather than guessing what residents might support, we hired Magellan Strategies to conduct a second statistically valid survey of Wheat Ridge voters. More than 670 likely voters participated in this round. The results were encouraging. So to hear more about that, I would like to turn it over to Ryan. You all know Ryan Winger from Magellan Strategies. He will present the results of the second survey. Ryan.
Thank you. Yeah, and good to be with you all again this evening. Let's jump right into it because I know that this is really, as was mentioned, just kind of the continuation of a conversation that began a few years ago, and we conducted a previous survey earlier this year, and so this second survey really kind of feeds off of that. You see there an example of a text message that went out to registered voters, and as was mentioned, we completed 672 interviews between the period from the 13th to the 21st. As we mentioned last time, these are weighted to represent what we anticipate turnout to look like this November. So just getting into the key takeaways and opportunities, what we find is that the ballot measure does begin in a pretty strong position of support. And I should mention one thing that really set this survey apart from the first one is we tested the actual ballot language. So the shall taxes be increased language that we're all familiar with. And we'll see that in a couple of slides here. But we found that initial support's at 64%. After the respondents learn more about the projects and why this is being considered, it increases all the way to 71%. So that suggests that, especially with additional informational campaign work, only strengthens support for the measure. What we also found is that streets and sidewalks and basic infrastructure investments are the strongest drivers of support. The most persuasive messages focus on maintaining that core infrastructure before repairs become more expensive, as was mentioned. And respondents view basic infrastructure maintenance as the strongest reason to support the measure. That's not to say that the other things are viewed as unimportant. Preserving community spaces and parks also resonates very strongly. And support is also driven by a simple belief that a sales tax spreads the cost broadly compared to a property tax. So a lot of folks are looking at it, you know, if we're going to do these important things, they do prefer a sales tax over a property tax, and that contributes to support as well. Among the folks that are opponents or who are going to vote no, at least at this point, as I completed the survey, the dominant concerns are simply cost of living. They don't want additional taxes. Some have a distrust of the city's financial management or just objections to bundling multiple projects together, which is fairly typical when we do a survey like this. But here it's not a critical mass anywhere near a majority of voters who had that viewpoint. But those that did especially called out the new city hall and police facilities in the same measure as the other investments. That's something that turned them off. Again, that's just among the no voters. So in this survey, again, we had done a lot of groundwork in the first survey. This one, we really wanted to jump right in. Following's about language for potential 1% sales tax increase. And there you see the language, shall City of Wheat Ridge taxes be increased up to 11 million. And then the bullet points, like those are the things that really folks' eyes are going to be drawn to. It's the first, what's the dollar amount and what's it going to be going towards? And again, we see 64% would vote yes, 30% would vote no, 6% have no opinion or are undecided at this point. That's a pretty strong measure of support. You see definitely yes and probably yes are both higher than the no categories. So again, over a quarter say definitely yes. We're starting in a pretty strong place of support. Moving on to the additional information, right? The things that we want folks to know if they didn't already know. And here's just those kind of ranked in order of what was most likely to move their opinions. Again, it comes down to the top messages center around sidewalks and just the fact that the city doesn't have a dedicated funding source for maintaining streets, sidewalks, public buildings, and other infrastructure. Like, those things are viewed as very important by the respondents. And so learning those two things, nearly 3 out of 4 are more likely to approve. Going on down the list, again, the argument that investing in public facilities, parks, streets, et cetera, infrastructure helps protect property values and supports long-term quality of life. That resonates as well. The keeping of Kohler Strand and Wilmore Davis elementary schools in Wheat Ridge, dedicated funding from the sales tax explaining to them that could be used to purchase the parks and athletic fields surrounding the schools for continued public use. That resonates. We see throughout the survey that the idea that continued public use compared to some other use that wouldn't be publicly available is something that really moves folks. We're still in the territory of 2 out of 3 when they hear these things are more likely to approve cities, parks, and public works maintenance facilities. Obviously, this is something that a lot of folks aren't as familiar with, although as the year has gone on, I'm sure there's a better chance that they've heard about these things, but consolidating the maintenance facility and the benefits of that. Also, if the city, again, as I just mentioned, if the city doesn't purchase portions of the Lutheran Legacy Campus and those elementary schools, those properties are likely to be sold for private development. That's something that folks are obviously a little bit concerned about, not maintaining public use of these areas. Delaying replacement of aging infrastructure results in higher repair costs. Pretty simple argument to make there that also resonates very strongly. Anderson Pool nearing the end of its useful life. Dedicated revenue from this sales tax could allow the city to prevent the permanent closure of the pool. That's up there as well. Again, all of these things, what we see is it's kind of a cumulative effect. All of these different pieces of information resonate pretty strongly with respondents. Because City Hall no longer has enough usable office space, the city already leases additional office space in multiple locations at taxpayer expense. That's something that maybe many folks were not familiar with. And so replacing those facilities would allow more services to be consolidated in one location. Because the measures funded through sales tax, again, a very easy, simple thing for folks to understand. Everyone who shops, dines, or spends money in Wheat Ridge is contributing. Again, they really like that aspect compared to a property tax. And, moving on down the list, again, it's not as if anything in the survey is viewed as unimportant by folks. But clearly the messages that center on the city services and public safety campus, police facilities, city hall and police headquarters, these things just don't resonate quite as much. They're kind of at the, I guess I would say, the bottom of the priority list. Not to say that they're not priorities, but just the other things that we mentioned in the survey are valued slightly more. But again, we asked them to evaluate the ballot language again, and as I said, there's kind of a cumulative effect to where support jumps all the way up to 71%, with just under a quarter, 23%, voting no. Again, only 6% having no opinion. So clear, strong movement of 7 points towards support once they learn, again, all of that information that they would be likely to learn and hear about were this to be placed on the ballot. Why would they vote yes? We wanted to hear open-ended responses from folks. And again, they just want to invest in infrastructure. They want to protect and expand parks, pools, open space, these gathering places. They want improved quality of life. They want to invest in the city's future. And again, there is that support for a sales tax rather than a property tax. And again, as a reminder, among the no voters, it's cost of living in opposition to any tax increase. That's the number one driver. Some folks also distrust the management and spending priorities of the city or oppose bundling the projects. And so they want to see either some different prioritization, or they're even throwing out perhaps alternative funding to avoid those taxes that, again, this group of 23% of folks really don't want to see taxes increased. So we did ask them, and I'm glad we did. This is a worthwhile question to follow up. Again, it's only among that 23%. But would they vote yes for a half cent instead of a 1% sales tax? And what we see here is that it's just generally the idea of taxes going up. The amount doesn't matter for this particular group of folks. We also wanted to test different project groupings. So not everything all together. We knew that was a sticking point for at least some folks from the first survey. So we wanted to present two different options. Again, how would you vote on a 1% sales tax increase if the following combinations of projects were included? And this is really interesting. What we see is that street and infrastructure maintenance, bicycle and pedestrian safety, and the new police and city services facilities actually test slightly worse than everything altogether, which suggests that we're losing something from the bullet points that were in the ballot language if we only ask these three. The next combination, we see a drop even more to only 60%. This is asking about the police and city services, Anderson Pool, and the community spaces at the old elementary schools. That makes sense. Like, we're losing the streets portion, right? That a lot of folks obviously found to be important. Still, I mean, it's still generally popular, but actually not as popular as the full list, which I thought was interesting. And then we just have the survey demographics. Again, where possible, these are weighted to reflect what we anticipate turnout to look like in November. So gender, party, age range, race, ethnicity, how long folks have lived in Wheat Ridge, rent, own, 4-year college degree, and then we have a pretty good split on income as well. And then there is the responses by council district. And with that, I can jump back to any slides you need me to, and I'll be happy to take questions.
Mayor, we also have Andrew Ma here from Piper Sandler, our bond underwriters, that will give a little bit more information about bonding capacity. Do you want to hear that first before questions, or do you want to go to questions?
Yeah, let's hear the whole thing.
Okay, great. So as you remember from our spring workshop, to complete all 6 priority projects, we estimated that we need somewhere between 190 to 240 million in one-time funding, and that would be for the Anderson Pool, Civic Center, school acquisitions, and the parks and public works facilities, and about 7 million annually for bike ped network and proactive infrastructure maintenance. So as I mentioned, Andrew Ma, Assistant Vice President of Piper Sandler. You may remember Andrew as well. He helped us on our current bond. He's here this evening. I've asked him to summarize what the debt capacity would be on different levels of sales tax, a half cent, 3/4, or a full penny. And then also discuss, there's different financing options that we have that provide different levels of project funding that are available to us, and then other mechanisms of timing of how we do the bonds. So we can ask voters potentially for a tax increase, and they can approve it, but there's only so much money that will raise, and that's dependent on the market the way it is today. It's not quite as good as it was when we issued our 2J bonds, so there's a little bit of a restriction. But I won't pull up Andrew's presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, everyone, for having me tonight. It's great to be back in front of everyone. Last time I was here, we talked a little bit about the different financing instruments that are out there and available for the city. And I remember from that meeting, we had said that, well, these are all financial instruments that the city has at its disposal. At the end of the day, there needs to be a revenue to support the repayment of this obligation. So it's great to see we're finally talking about that tonight, and I want to dive a little bit into the specifics of the financings that we're potentially considering if a sales tax does get approved. So last time I was here, we talked a little bit about COPs, sales tax revenue bonds, and general obligation bonds. Tonight, we're specifically going to focus on COPs, or certificates of participation. These are the most common form of financing for Colorado municipalities. It is a form of lease financing, and it can be utilized to borrow. In the city's case, we project up to $151 million based on a 1% sales and use tax rate. So here we break down the different amounts of borrowing capacity that the city has based on a 1%, 0.75%, and 0.5% sales and use tax rate. This table at the very bottom highlights the different financing statistics and borrowing capacity under those different scenarios. So this row highlighted in yellow here, borrowing capacity, indicates the amount that the city could borrow based on these different sales and use tax rates and based on today's market conditions. So as I mentioned, a 1% sales and use tax based on today's interest rates, the city would be able to borrow 151 million of COPs. At a lower 0.75% rate, that goes down to 113 million. And then at the contemplated 0.5% tax rate, it goes down to 75 million, about half of the 1% tax rate. And then we've highlighted for you here several other statistics: total debt service, that's the total repayment cost, so including interest; average annual debt service; true interest cost, or is essentially the borrowing rate of the financing, 4.81% based on today's current rates; and then the final maturity of the financing. So this assumes that we pass the, let's say, 1% sales and use tax rate this November. We enter the market in 2027 and issue one financing of COPs. You could get up to 151 million based on assuming today's interest rates. Patrick and I have discussed looking at different ways to approach this, knowing that your capital needs could exceed that 151. For example, phased issuances is an option. And when I say phased issuances, I mean, we issue 151 million in 2027, but as we all know, the city's sales and use tax revenues are growing every year. So let's say in 5 years, you're showing, instead of 11.3, 12.3 million of revenue. That's an extra $1 million of annual revenue that we can borrow against. So say we issue 151 million in 2027. Once the city's revenues increase to a point where another financing can be executed, then we issue more COPs to fund more of the city's capital plans. That's a very common strategy in debt management and debt issuance that municipalities use to fund projects as those capital needs come up. The last thing I want to mention is that something we discussed last time is that COPs do not require voter authorization, but they do require physical collateral to secure the financing. And this is a key feature of lease financings. And when I say collateral, I mean some physical asset of near equivalent value to the COPs that are being issued. So if we issued 151 million of COPs, the city would need to put up 151 million of physical collateral. In this case, let's say you're using the COP proceeds to fund the new Civic Center. You could use the Civic Center as the collateral for the financing, even though it's not constructed yet. That's a very, very common strategy used to secure lease financings. Any questions on the COPs before we move on to sales tax bonds? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you said at the beginning of your presentation that these are commonly used. How common are they?
I would say
Can you tell me?
multiple of these types of financings are done every single year, especially ones that are backed by a sales tax that has been elected. So for example, we are currently working on a transaction for the city of Fort Morgan. Up in Morgan County, they did a sales tax increase last year. I believe it was 1% or 1.25%, and they're issuing COPs right now. We just kicked off the financing process. They're issuing COPs to fund a new indoor aquatics facility. There was a very similar financing to that, sales tax backed COP financed in Timnath that was just completed, and it's being looked at in Berthoud as well. Those are just a couple. I could get you a much longer list, but it truly is, I think, the most popular way to fund new capital projects in Colorado.
And do you have any examples in the Denver Metro or Jeffco area?
I can come back to you with several examples. Those are just the ones that came to me at the top of my head.
Great, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Council Rome.
Thank you, Mayor. Could you tell me a little bit about the assumed annual revenue? Is there just a number that you go with, or is it something specific to Wheat Ridge?
Yeah, so this is actually one of the assumptions that Patrick gave us regarding how much sales and use tax revenue to assume would be available to secure the financing. So I think he was estimating at a 1% rate that would generate 11.3 million of annual revenue to start with, obviously understanding that that figure is likely to grow year over year.
I don't see. Oh, Councilor Wood.
I started to say this is immaterial, but it's probably not. What is our bond rating?
That is a great question. So we actually met with the rating agency most recently back in 2024, and that was part of the sales and use tax revenue bonds for the 2J bond. The rating agency, S&P, thought very highly of the city, so the rating for those bonds was AA-. That's very, very high investment grade, and I think indicative of the strong financial management of the city.
One more quick question, if that's okay. Like you noted that Timnath used COPs in Fort Morgan, and they've done some phased issuance of COPs. When they do additional phases, does that have any effect on the bond rating?
No, that in and of itself does not have any impact on the bond rating. You know, if you were borrowing a very large amount of debt for the size of your city, in this case, I don't think that's true at all, but you know, if you're using phased issuances to borrow a very large amount of debt for the size of your municipality, then that's probably viewed negatively. Not because of the phased issuances necessarily, but because you're trying to borrow so much debt. So phased issuances in and of itself, not a credit negative.
Thank you.
Councilor Martel.
Can phase issuances be done or issued on the same collateral?
That is a great question. I would say that is not as common of a financing structure. That's called a master lease structure. It is something that has been done numerous times in Colorado for as long as COPs have been around. I know of various school districts, one comes specifically to mind, and we can do more research onto how common that is for Colorado municipalities, but that is a possible structure that can be utilized.
But is it more common that if we were to take on COPs and did a phase issuance, we'd have to select different collateral for each?
That is
issuance?
the more common approach, correct.
I don't see any more questions, so go ahead.
Thank you very much. So moving on to our discussion from COPs, we're now going to move on to sales tax revenue bonds. Sales tax revenue bonds differ from COPs in that they do require voter authorization, which you all, I believe, are familiar with from the 2J authorization. Unlike COPs as well, they do not require collateral. So they're solely secured by the revenues that you are pledging to repay the bonds with. So very similar concept here. We ran 3 scenarios, 1% sales and use tax, 0.75%, and 0.5%. And this table here highlights the financing statistics for each scenario. As you will probably notice, the borrowing capacity for sales and use tax revenue bonds is materially less than that of COPs. And the reason for that is because they are solely secured by revenues that you're pledging, the sales and use tax revenue that you're electing. And thus, you must prove a higher debt service coverage to the rating agencies and to investors. And that means for every $1 of debt service you're paying, you must prove $1.5 of revenue, maybe 1.75 or 2 times. That depends on the target credit rating you would like to get. Here we assume a 1.5 times debt service coverage, which is very common for Colorado municipalities and sales tax revenue bonds. And that nets us a borrowing capacity of $121 million under the 1% sales and use tax scenario, $91 million for the 0.75%, and $61 million for the 0.5% based on current market conditions. What you may also notice is that the true interest cost on this table, or the borrowing rate, is also lower. So the COPs were at 4.81%, and this is slightly less at 4.74%. Investors view sales tax revenue bonds slightly more favorably than they do COPs in the market. But at the end of the day, what is more material to the capacity, the borrowing capacity of the city, is going to be that coverage ratio rather than the interest rate of the financing. Any questions on the sales tax revenue bonds? So those are really the main scenarios that we have prepared for our study session today. As I mentioned, Patrick and I are working through some alternative structures to see if there's additional capacity that can be generated by doing a phased structure, playing around with, how much revenue growth we would assume year to year, time intervals between phased issuances to see how much potential borrowing the city could incur for its capital projects.
Mayor Pro Tem Hulty.
Thank you. So I know a couple things about the numbers we're looking at tonight is that it's been mentioned that the bond market has not been moving in our favor. So, in the numbers, these are different than the numbers we saw in our workshop in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
So no one can predict the future, but are there any guesstimates as to what direction the bond market might be going? Because I know, with 2J, we did 2 phases. We have not done the second round of the bond issuance. And so how is that a factor when we're looking at this in terms of playing that market a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I often suggest and recommend is that, we need to plan for the worst case scenario, or a worse case scenario than we're looking at today. Because as you said, we don't know what's going to happen with the market, especially from now to, let's say, early 2027, the earliest to which a COP or sales tax revenue bond financing would probably be entered into. So for planning purposes, I'm showing you interest rates based on today's market, but for planning purposes in determining which capital projects can we fund from a financing, we like to provide estimates that are based on higher interest rate assumptions. So maybe instead of today's rates, that's today's rates plus 100 basis points or 1%, or 150 basis points, 1.5%. As far as what we think is going to happen, it's obviously very hard to say. There's been so much geopolitical conflict in the Middle East and headline risk in the news. There was a pretty big move in the market last week with the conflict in Iran. We're seeing that settle down a little bit, and our prediction per se is that once the events in the Middle East kind of calm down, then that should be favorable for the bond market. Obviously, that's no guarantee.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead.
So moving on to the market update, that's a great segue. This is a graph showing interest rates for MMD, which is the tax-exempt interest rate benchmark, that's the orange line, against treasuries, US treasuries, that's the blue line there. US treasuries are a taxable rate, MMD is a tax-exempt rate, which is what you all would borrow at. And you can see here the shift in interest rates that has occurred over the past 12 or so years, notable dip during COVID, and where we are today, which is well above 10-year averages. Moving on to a very brief economic update, I just wanted to highlight a few things. So the Federal Reserve is obviously a very large factor in the markets, the fixed income markets, because they set the benchmark interest rate, known as the Fed funds rate. Earlier in the year, everyone in the market thought that the Fed was going to initiate rate cuts, so lowering rates. Based on the plethora of economic data that has come out since the start of the year, inflation coming in higher than expected, it's actually more likely today, what the market is pricing in, that the Fed is going to actually raise rates. So this graph at the bottom kind of indicates that, but put simply, the Fed is expected to raise rates 1 to 2 times over the next year. Another very important factor, geopolitical conflict. As I mentioned, to the extent that the conflict in the Middle East cools down, we would likely see interest rates come down as well. And then lastly, what I would mention is very specific to our market, the Colorado market, and that is from the financings that I've done, my team has done in the past couple months, we've seen the demand for Colorado municipal bonds and COPs specifically be very strong. So despite some of the headwinds in the fixed income market, Colorado paper specifically is still heavily demanded, heavily sought out by investors. So I think that would also be the case for Wheat Ridge, given your very strong credit rating. And that's all that we have prepared today, so I'm happy to field any questions.
Council, we'll go ahead and go to questions. Mr. Goff, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, that's it. Thank you.
We'll go to questions for anybody, anything you need to ask. Councilor Wood.
So we talked about COPs and we talked about sales tax revenue bonds. Do you issue one or the other? You don't issue both?
Yes, you would most certainly issue one or the other.
Okay.
If you were to issue COPs, I think part of the reason why you would do that is because you wouldn't need to go to the voters with the second ballot question. So it would be most beneficial to do one or the other.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Martel.
Regarding the COPs, they are newer than the sales tax bonds, and I appreciate the benefit that you don't have to go to the voters for the bond as well as the sales tax. However, I guess my question is, what have your experiences been with the other projects you've worked on in public perception of a COP when we don't have to go to our voters to get approval for the bond, yet we're using collateral for these COPs, the education part or the trust part of issuing a COP versus getting approval for a bond?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I would say is that I have seen it in certain communities where they would like to see the financing put on the ballot, specifically because they want, maybe their board or council wants the voters to have the ultimate say on whether they should do this project or not. I would say the COPs have actually been around for a very long time, 40 plus years, and the vast majority of communities are very comfortable with the fact that you do not require voter authorization. There are definitely, as I mentioned, select communities where just based on their voter base, they think it's more beneficial to put a ballot question in front of the voters specifically, which is why they often would gear towards a bond election question maybe rather than COPs.
Have you had any experience where of course, this wouldn't happen here, but where a municipality failed on a COP and had to give up their collateral?
Yeah, I would say that is, I have seen it. It is very rare. The reason it's very rare is because the way that COPs are structured, if you default on your payment, you can't appropriate to your payment, then you give up the collateral for the duration of the site lease. And that typically extends 10 years beyond the final maturity of the COPs. So let's say in this case, we are issuing the COPs and they're due in 2057. The site lease would extend to 2067. If you defaulted on your COP payment, you could lose the asset, let's just say it's the Civic Center, for up to 2067. The reason we rarely see entities default on their COP payments is because they pick collateral that is highly essential to their operations. So a town hall, a civic center in your case, a facility that's so important to the operations of the city for its proper function that it would not make economic service sense to default on a payment.
Mayor Pro Tem Holteen.
Thank you. I've got a couple questions for Ryan.
Yeah, of course.
All right, back to the polling. So one of this polling was really helpful, and we're getting a clear message from our community that they want to see us make these investments. They're willing to pay for it. So I feel this is a much easier, position to be in than maybe some of our surrounding jurisdictions. But one of the things that, we can't get out of this poll is how is support impacted when this ballot initiative is also next to another sales tax question. And so I'm wondering, in your experience, if you can give some indication on how support is impacted when this is competing with an equivalent sales tax ask of another district or agency. that
Sure.
would be-
Yeah, I mean, it certainly doesn't help, right, to have two different increases on the same ballot of the same nature. It's more difficult to, or it matters less, I should say, when it's sales versus property tax. Usually folks are, even though just cumulative tax increases for some folks is really a concern. But you're right to point out that when it's two asks and they're both sales tax, it just kind of gets the wheels turning for voters a little bit. Like, okay, so when you combine these two together, what's that going to look like? Do I prefer one of these things much more than I prefer the other? Do I value one more than the other? Can I vote for both? So certainly it doesn't help. But what's encouraging, I would say, about this polling is that there's probably enough of a cushion that you can afford to lose some support from folks that say, yeah, I'm only going to vote for, do you have in mind Arvada Fire? Is that I'm
We have
assuming that's
both-
what you had in mind?
Both Arvada and West Metro. So the entire city it's two slightly different tax rates, but they're
Right.
both equivalently to what we're looking at.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So, obviously there's going to be some number of folks that say, hey, I don't want to vote yes on both of these. And I do value my fire protection. So right now I'm going to choose that. Just psychologically, I mean, just trying to put yourself in the shoes of the average voter. They're going to see your question before they see special district questions. Like that's not nothing. That matters at least a little bit as they're going through the ballot. Special district questions are at the back of the ballot. Municipal questions are before those. So that's just something to consider as you're considering all the different factors that are at play in terms of how someone chooses how to vote. But yeah, it doesn't help, but it doesn't spell, doom for one or both asks either. So it's really kind of hard to say.
Okay.
I wish we could simulate the whole ballot, right? But it's not really
Right.
possible. So
Right. I think the thing that I'm grappling with is, I think, based on the numbers we had this spring at our workshop, there was a lot more confidence that at 1% we'd get enough bonding or COP revenue to be able to put a lot of these things in and be successful with 1%. And what we're learning tonight is that even at that 1%, there's probably some hard choices that are going to have to be made. So trying to sort of navigate this polling information against that decision, as well as like that they're going to be looking at an equivalent either 1 or 3/4% tax increase that is predominantly going to be decided by people outside our community. I mean, that's the hard thing. It's not like it's Wheat Ridge Fire Department going for this. It's, you know, it feels like you don't have a lot of control over the success of the competing ballot initiatives. So I'm
Right.
just kind of naming out loud some of the complexities of trying to figure out what to do with this. That I know you don't have the answers for, but you have more experience.
Sure,
with
yeah, no,
that.
and I think one thing that's also fairly encouraging in this polling is that, yeah, I mean, I really did think it was interesting that when you drop out some of the bullet points, you're actually losing support. But we also didn't change we kept it at 1% and dropped some bullet points. So that explains part of it. If you drop the percentage and drop some bullet points, who knows how that would impact them. But what we found is that, yes, it dropped, but it didn't fall off a cliff. Like, there's nothing among those bullet points that's really like, if you don't have this in there, it will not pass. And so that does give you at least some flexibility to say, okay, among these 5 bullet points that we had in there, obviously, perfect world, we would include all 5 of them. But if the 1% sales tax, if it doesn't get us there with the COPs, you have the flexibility to choose the ones that are broadly considered more popular and still get it done.
Councilor Okada.
Thank you, Mayor. This question, I think, is probably a devil's advocate question, and just for me in my mind, and maybe only my mind, to eliminate this possibility, a 1.5% tax, we didn't poll for that at all, but the support that I saw on that was on the 1% tax really surprised me. I imagine it's very uncommon for a city council to look at that and stroke their chin, think about the numbers that we're seeing at a 1% sales tax and consider something higher.
Sure. Yeah. 1%, just for whatever reason, it's a nice round number. It just seems kind of like a magic number for a lot of folks. You go right under 1%. Oh, that's great. But if you go right over, you're talking over 1% now, even though it's not a significant difference. It's like a psychological thing again. But, given the strong support for 1%, I don't think it's completely crazy to consider 1.5 or maybe, arrive at what the number would need to be to get these things done and say, okay, how does that feel? How does that, obviously you start getting much higher than 1.5%, 2%, 3%. It gets very difficult to pass something at that rate. Just because a lot of folks, view those as significant increases, which they are. So, but no, it's an interesting question, and I only say that because of the strong support in the survey. If support was lower, I would say, don't even go down that road. So.
Thanks, Ryan. That really helps. My next question's for Andrew, still in devil's advocate zone. But I noticed something very linear in the differences between 1%, not exactly linear, but something very linear there. Would we be expecting roughly a 50% increase on top of the 1% in our borrowing power for both the, I'm forgetting the acronyms, the sales bond and then the COPs? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assumption that you could, extrapolate the borrowing capacity if you wanted to consider higher tax rates to increase your borrowing amount. I think that's very fair.
Okay.
One thing I would mention that just came to mind when we were discussing this is that, one strategy that also has been used in other places is where you can elect a 1.25% sales tax, but at the option of city council, you can decrease that to a lower rate. And it specifically says that in the ballot question. I don't know if how common that Ryan might see that as for Colorado municipalities, but it has been done before, so I just wanted to put that out there. Most recently, this was done in Fort Morgan. They have I think it was a 1.25% sales tax, and upon maturity of the COPs that they're issuing against those sales tax revenues, they built in a little option to decrease the sales tax rate by 0.25%.
To clarify, that's an option that the city council would choose at that time.
Correct.
I got it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. So potentially a strategy to make it more marketable. Just wanted to throw it out there.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah.
Councilor Snow.
This might be for staff probably, but I was just looking at we are having an ordinance for the ballot language on August 10th. So, or would we see like a draft or a sample, I'm assuming, before that time?
Yeah, to meet the deadlines that are required, and we'd have to do it by ordinance. We do have first and second readings on August 24th. The language is due to the county 1st of September. We do have one more study session, August 3rd or 4th, where we could come back. This got a little bit more complicated because of the bond capacity was not as high as we hoped. So we were hoping it would have been an easier discussion tonight, but we may have to come back next Monday as well and finalize it. So yes, you would see it before it goes on.
Got it. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Holting?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Snell. That was actually going to be a proposal that I was going to put to council for consideration is, I think we got really important last minute information. I read the polling and had, I thought, a lot of clarity on a path forward for how we could work with this, and learning late in the day today that our bonding capacity is definitely significantly different than what we were considering this spring. I think continuing the conversation next week, because we are going to have to look pretty closely at what we're including in the ballot. I think in all options on deck is a harder lift, not impossible, but so I think for me personally, I know I would appreciate some more time to look at that. It does make for a little bit of a longer study session next Monday, but this is a really important decision, and I feel like the information that we got here tonight is really pertinent to understanding what to do with the polling. So I'm going to first check with Patrick to make sure that works.
Yeah, I was going to say that would give Andrew and I some more time to run more scenarios as well, correct? And
Absolutely.
that may bump up the capacity a bit so that you have a stronger number to decide which projects you want to include in the ballot.
Yeah, and I think it would be really helpful to also get a packet that's reminding us, because some of the numbers have adjusted, like the parks costs with some of our school partners that are coming in. So a little bit more clarity on like comparing the actual costs of the one-time capital investments and ongoing would be helpful for us to take a look at that. So anyway, do I have support from council that we bring this back again next week to dig in some of those details? Meanwhile, we do have our polling expert in the room, so we should definitely take advantage of Ryan if there's more in the poll.
Councilor Martel?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to take this moment. I agree with the more time. I'm not sure who I've talked to, but I will not be here next week. But I will be able to review my packet and get information and questions in. I will actually be on a plane during the study session, so I can't remote in, but I'll make sure to get questions to you all beforehand. Thank you.
Any other questions or concern? Councilor Wood?
Since Ryan is here with us this week, I think that at least it seems the intent is to see how we might be able to do this, keep probably the ballot language as it is today. But based on your polling, maybe I should just look at the numbers, but I wondered if you'd sort of reiterate, are there, among the list of bullet points that are listed in the ballot, are there some that stand out as more popular and some that stand out as considerably less? So I do know there are numbers attached to these two. I just kind of wanted to hear it maybe.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, generally, the streets and infrastructure piece is valued slightly more than the new city hall and police facility. That's not to say that anything is a complete, anchor on the prospects of the ballot language. So, but generally, yeah, you can see both from this survey and from the survey earlier this year. It's not like this was. All these things were generated randomly. Like all these things are important, right? But just in the minds of voters, they do slightly prioritize some things over others. So,
And it did appear that all of these things, though, were favored by considerably more than not being favored.
sure. And the other thing that's important to know is that as they learn more information about those quote unquote less popular things, they're only more likely to support them after learning more about, why there is a need for the city hall and police facilities. Because and we see that very often in municipalities. That's just something that the average person has no conception of. Whereas when you talk about parks and pools and streets, like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. A lot of folks aren't familiar intimately with what may be, the needs facing the city when it comes to office space and a city hall and police facilities. But as they learn more, they're more likely to support those things. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. Was there any pulling on the terms as far as, was this, like to be a certain term of 20 years versus permanent?
Right, yeah, so in this question, we specifically didn't ask a sunset question. Sometimes we will ask that to no voters. We did not ask that in this case. So I don't necessarily have an answer for exactly how that affects support. Typically, what we find is that, except in very conservative communities, adding sunsets doesn't materially move support one way or another. So,
thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we go ahead and move forward with our second agenda item? Councilor Okada?
I guess it's coming a little bit out of that space of devil's advocate for me, but I do, besides the ask for us to look into for more time so that we can have more time to prepare. I almost wonder if there would be support for us asking to specifically also look at what a above 1% sales tax would be, even if it is just for the exercise of understanding. This is how far we would need to go in order to do it all. So almost like information in both directions to help us understand like the scale. I might be in the minority here, but for me, it would help me understand as well what kind of scope of prioritization we would need to be able to bring to that, while at the same time entertaining the possibility of going beyond 1%.
Mr. Goff, in your scenarios, can you maybe figure out how much money we need and then
Yeah,
work
we can
backwards
do
and
a
give us a percentage? Would that
top
be more
level.
helpful?
Yep.
It would. Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, Mayor Pro Tem.
This is more of just a technical request for our preparation next week also, is for a couple of the things on here are eligible for or likely to receive other funding sources. So not just getting here's what City Hall costs, but here are some other funding sources that could be going towards that so that we can see where we can exercise some flexibility or
Some haircuts.
yeah.
Yep.
Trying to figure out like where can we like squeeze through the line and then where can we have some flexibility on where things can move after the ballot initiative. So that would be helpful as well.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your help tonight, and we will probably engage your services again. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Andrew.
We will move on to agenda item number 2, the school property.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. I will introduce this item, and Mr. Dahl has been part of the review of this as well, so he'll be here to answer any questions, help with questions. So this next item is a discussion regarding the proposed acquisition and reuse of the former Wilmar Davis Elementary School property. Tonight's discussion is not approval of the purchase. Rather, staff is seeking your feedback on the overall transaction framework and consensus to continue negotiating the purchase and sale agreements with both Jefferson County's Public School and Spectra centers. So as council recalls, this effort has been underway for several years following the closure of Wilmar Davis Elementary School. Earlier this year, council directed staff to pursue a public-private partnership through a request for interest process. After evaluating 9 proposals, council expressed consensus in June to move forward with Spectra Centers as the city's preferred partner because their proposal preserves the parkland envisioned in city's planning documents and what we've heard from our community, reuses the existing school building, provides a valuable community serving educational use, does not require a zoning change, and minimizes impacts to the surrounding neighborhood. The proposed transaction is intentionally structured in two consecutive steps. First, the city would purchase the entire 7-acre property from Jeffco Schools through its municipal interest process that they've established. Immediately afterward, the city would retain approximately 2.5 acres for a future neighborhood park and convey approximately 4.5 acres, including the existing school building, to Spectra Centers. This approach allows the city to permanently preserve public parkland while ensuring the school building remains an active community asset. Financially, this is a very favorable opportunity for the city. The city would purchase the entire property for approximately $2.84 million. That is at the bottom of the appraisal value that the school district would accept. And then we would sell the school parcel to Spectra for approximately $2.75 million. So again, we paid $2.84 to the school district. Spectra would pay $2.75 million to us, to the city. After accounting for brokerage commissions and other closing costs, the city's estimated investment to permanently acquire approximately 2.5 acres of future parkland is about $172,000. This acquisition is well within the funding that the city has budgeted in the open space fund. If you remember, we have $2 million set aside for both Wilmore Davis and College Strand. The staff is also talking about additional revenue sources. Staff is also exploring potential Jefferson County open space grant funding. And Karen Donnell is here this evening. She can help answer any questions about that. That may further reduce the cost to the city. So the purchase agreements, the draft agreements before you in your packet establish the framework for the transaction. The agreement with the Jeffco Schools addresses acquisition of the property, due diligence, subdivision of the property, and customary closing requirements. The agreement with Spectra establishes the city's sale of the school parcel and includes important contingencies related to financing, licensing, execution of a development agreement, and a right of first refusal in favor of the city. And I'll give more details about that in a bit. Both agreements do remain in draft form and will continue to be refined through additional negotiations with both parties. There are still several important agreements that will come back to City Council before closing. Those include a development agreement, as I mentioned, that would address any shared parking, access, utilities, maintenance responsibilities, and coordination between the future park and Spectra. Staff is also proposing, as I mentioned, a first right of refusal that would provide the city the opportunity to reacquire the properties should Spectra ever decide to sell it in the future. These provisions help protect the city's long-term public investment. Community engagement, assuming Jeffco Schools approves the city's proposal, staff intends to hold a neighborhood information meeting with Spectra Centers later this summer. Although not required, we believe this is a very important step to provide residents an opportunity to learn more about the project, ask questions, and provide feedback. Once the city acquires the park property, Parks and Rec will conduct separate public engagement when needed to determine any future design or programming of that future park. So for council, the request tonight, staff is seeking council consensus to continue negotiations with Jeffco Schools and Spectra Centers, finalize the purchase and sale agreements, return to council next month with final agreements necessary to authorize this acquisition and the subsequent conveyance of the property to Spectra. So with that, as I said, Mr. Dahl is here to help answer any questions. But based on those terms that I laid out, we are just asking for direction to continue moving forward with those negotiations, and then we'll bring it back for final approval.
Thank you. Do we have questions or? Questions or concerns? Councilor Okada.
I was just pointing at the screen for people who were wondering what he was talking about. That's it.
Councilor Quinn.
Again, this is such a win-win. Excellent job, everybody putting this together. This is, I'm all for moving forward with everything.
Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. This agreement seems to be the high level of certainty that this, unless something comes up, this will go through. And we just finished discussing the ballot language for the possible ballot initiative. And one of the things on there says, should the city approve purchase of Wilmore Davis? So would we want to make any change there?
To the ballot question?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, I think Councilmember Holstein mentioned that when we come back next week. A lot of these projects were in different iterations of negotiations and process, and the schools are definitely there. It may not need to be on the ballot. If we think it helps sell the ballot question, it may be on there, and the money could be used for development of the parks. The money we have right now is enough for acquisition, but not future development.
Mayor Pro Tem Holteen.
And I've said this before, just as the council member whose district this is alongside Councilmember Ohm, I mean, this is just deeply aligns with what our constituents would like to see there. Everyone we've talked to at our Engage Wheat Ridge that we presented this to is just, absolutely delighted. And I just appreciate that we are going to go ahead and include a community meeting, even though it's not necessary. It's just really appreciated. People want to be informed, and they have a lot of questions still, but I will just say from our constituents, we've heard nothing but just enthusiastic support, and the financial aspects, a bonus win as well, but the actual use and allocation is fantastic. So thank you.
Mr. Dahl, did you have any? Mr. Dahl worked with Lauren on drafting his agreements, as always, and I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, two things, maybe. It's a simultaneous transaction. So, sort of the house of cards routine, if both transactions have to happen or neither of them do, but really they rely on the same due diligence materials, right, in terms of title and whatnot. It's the same property. So when I worked with Lauren to put these two together, we found we drafted the first one with the school district and then evolved one with Spectra. With Spectra, of course, it's more of an arm's length transaction. They're buying it for a specific purpose. Subject to financing and the kinds of things that a commercial buyer would require to be subject to. The transaction from the school district to the city of the entirety is between two governmental entities and was easier to draft. The second thing I would mention is the importance of a right of first refusal agreement with Spectra, because if they buy it and then decide X years later that they're no longer in the business of education and they want to dispose of the property for some other purpose, that would run contrary to what the constituents in that district would be expecting. And so I've prepared a draft right of first refusal agreement that Spectra will have to sign to make sure that it stays that way. Usually you can get those approved by the buyer because the buyer doesn't have any immediate plans, and a right of first refusal agreement insulates them from risk. If they do want to dispose of the property, we get to buy it first. And so usually you can inspire them to sign it, but that will be an important protection that we'll make sure we have. Other than that, I'm happy to answer questions on the drafts.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, do we have consensus to move forward with the recommendations in the staff memo? We do.
Awesome, thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Goff?
No agenda items. I have one quick staff report, and then,
Go for it.
Want to go for it? Yeah, just a real quick budget update. This is the 26 mid-year budget update, which city charter requires that I provide. You'll get a hard copy of this in the next day or two, but overall, the city's financial position remains stable. Our general fund revenues are essentially on target as expected, coming in at 99% of what we budgeted, so a little bit lower. Overall, revenues are tracking close to projections. There are some notable differences. Sales tax continues to perform well. It's slightly above expectations. We're about 3.3% higher than last year at this time, which is great. Use taxes are significantly below projections. That's really due to the timing of projects. We believe, last year, a lot of building permits were pulled early in the year. We are still holding out for the Aura, I think is for the American Motel site. Once that comes in, we believe that should come in at the end of this year, that we will meet our projections on use tax revenues. Grant revenues are well ahead as well. Our safety camera revenues are increasing. They're a little bit below what we expected, I think mainly because of a lot of people aren't paying their tickets, and we haven't started collections yet, and some of the cameras have not been activated as well. On the expenditure side, we're pretty far down. We're about $4.5 million below what we expected to spend this year. I think a lot of that was because of the non-winter we had. So we spent a lot less on diesel fuel and salt and mag chloride and those types of things. So our expenditures are way down, which is great. Comparing this year to the same period in 25, our overall general fund revenues are down about 1.1%. But again, I think once those use tax collections come in, I think we'll be fine. We are, as you know, our fund balance policy is to maintain we target 25%. We are expecting probably to have a 23% fund balance at the end of the year, so higher than our minimum, but a little bit lower than target, so in a good spot there as well. So we'll continue to watch and monitor revenues and expenditures, of course, the rest of the year as we bring you the 2027 budget. So thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Goff. We'll go to elected officials. Well, and we didn't have city attorneys. Okay. We'll go to elected officials reports, and we will start in District 4. Councilor Okada.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to say thank you to the staff, to you, the mayor, to Mayor Pro Tem, to my co-counselors for all of that work that went into, that's not quite done even, Engage Wheat Ridge Month. What a fun month. What a bounty of great conversations, of wonderful disagreement, of really challenging conversations with folks in the community. If I was naive to how much effort and how much extra oomph that took, especially from staff, I would want it to be every single month. But that was just a ton of fun. A special thank you to the District 4 residents who showed up to our our District 4 meetings, either in extreme heat or during kind of like the end of a timing day where I think people were starting to wind down a little bit too. And I guess extreme heat across the board. Thanks everybody for dealing with that. That's really everything for me.
Thank you. Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. This last Thursday, I had an opportunity to do a police ride along. I haven't done one of those in about a year and a half, and I thought I was overdue. And this morning, with our Sergeant Gross, gave me a tour of the new Police Incident Command Center. This is a mobile emergency response vehicle that the city has recently acquired. It is state-of-the-art. It will be valuable. In fact, I guess it was already an incident last week that this vehicle proved its worth by allowing our police to sort of look at what's happening at a situation without having to be right at the site. Anyway, it's a very valuable asset and a good addition to our Wheat Ridge Police Department's efforts. We had a discussion about the Wheat Ridge Police Department's intention to consider redrawing the police beats because the level of calls for service has kind of shifted around the city a little bit. Now that the hospital is out where it is and it's not on 38th Avenue and the American Hotel is no longer in business, some of the more active sites that our police department responds to have changed. So that's something they're working on, and hopefully we'll hear how that goes along. on this last Saturday, I had an opportunity to attend the Peach and Honey Fest at the Green on 38th. Very good turnout. And I think that it does bode well for a possible repeat when they come around next year. And I also have a request to staff here to see if something that I had a discussion, we mentioned Kiwanis earlier, and there's also the Dominic Breton Business Awards that the city will be working on. That I remember one of the coffees I had with Dominic Beck a little while ago, where we talked about some of the things that that would be nice to have, and I guess this kind of falls in that category. When you drive into just about any city anywhere in the United States, usually on the city line as you get into town, there's a sign that says, these are the service organizations that operate in our city. The Kiwanis, the Optimists, the Rotary, and some of the other groups. And I would like to think that in Wheat Ridge, we could put one or two of these signs up, possibly on Kipling, right across from the one that when you enter into Arvada, it says, these are all the service organizations that operate in Arvada. This, I think, and again, I think only because, well, mostly because this was a request directly from Dominic when we talked about some of the things that Wheat Ridge could be doing. And I thought it was just a good idea, and I thought tonight would be an appropriate time to bring that up. And that, Mr. Mayor, is all I have for right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. We'll go on to District 3. Counselor Wood.
I have to say, July has been quite a month, and with a lot of meetings and a lot of learning opportunities. This past week, and I won't steal all the thunder, Councilmember Quinn and I had our second District 3 meeting on Saturday morning. Mayor Stites was there, which was wonderful. Councilmember Okada, Councilmember Larson was there as well. And we had a small but mighty group, and I thought that we had a good group, and we got some good feedback and a really good time. We had a meeting earlier in the month that similarly also went well. A few more people, it was maybe better attended, and a more diversity of opinion. But in both cases, I think we learned a lot. And I will say, for someone who still considers herself a fairly new council member, this month presented opportunities all the way around to learn a lot. I attended 2 trail walks on Clear Creek with Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen and Mayor Stites. We had great people that came along on those. Again, great feedback, good learning opportunity. The 101 meeting that the mayor had last week was also very educational in that we had a great tour of the police department, and I learned more than I ever knew that I needed to learn about the work that our police department does and how they do it, and the accommodations that they have. In addition to that, I was able to attend Dr. Cog meeting 2 weeks ago. Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen is our representative of success.
Thank you. Counselor Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ditto to my co-counselor, Ms. Wood, on our District 4 meeting. I won't beat a dead horse on that anymore. I also attended the District 4 meeting at Prospect Park, where I embarrassed myself when a bee attacked me relentlessly, and my apologies to the pastor at the Lutheran Church on 44th and Kipling. My language was a little colorful when I was attacked. That was a great meeting. You guys did a great job. I was also attended the Whirlwind things I just wrote down. The Ives groundbreaking Friday, I believe it was. That was a good time. I was tempted to jump in one of their excavators and break a lot of ground, but I didn't. Had the Parks and Rec tour with the Parks and Rec Commission. The B&B Connection are awesome. Benny and Brandon, awesome people. They did a great job. And I also Wednesday attended the my first Optimist Club. It was great. The glass is half full. During that meeting, they had a Jeffcom dispatch representative there, and they were talked about a program you can get on Smart 911 that when you register and put some information into that program, it will allow emergency services to know if you have any pets in the house, if you have a door lock code, what that is, if you have any special requirements, you're on oxygen or medications or anything of that nature. So it gives the first responders a heads up before they get to you to try to help prepare to help with your whatever's going on. And that's all I had to report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Martell.
Thank you, Mayor. I would also like to echo my council member partners, the success of Engage Wheat Ridge. I have evidence that this was in our, Jenny and I, Councilmember Snell and I received a thank you note from 2 of our residents for hosting Engage Wheat Ridge events and thanking us for all of the engagement. And that is, I think, the best evidence right there that it meant a lot to our community. Just a little recap of District 1 engagement. We had 4 of 5 events. Our last event we ended up canceling because of the heat and air quality index alerts. So we were a little disappointed to not be able to have that last event, but we were able to give Brandon the afternoon off. And then also Isaiah with Parks and Rec was there ready to help us. But when we told him we were decided to cancel, he was like, and hightailed it out of there. But he was fully planning on helping us for as long as we needed him. So we just appreciate all the support, like my partners have mentioned. I do want to call out, one of our events was at Sweet Ridge Studios, and we talked a lot about our 6 priorities. We had some really great discussion. We had a couple business owners, we had community members, we had members of different boards and commissions there, and we did an activity where we talked about what we loved about Wheat Ridge, and then we each made shrinky dinks inspired by what we loved about Wheat Ridge. And one gentleman used a blank shrinky dink sheet and drew an outline of the city of Wheat Ridge with the 4 district lines, and then drew over it Sweet Ridge in different colors representing the districts, and made his own little Wheat Ridge map, shrinky dink. That was amazing. And I made a very poorly designed copy of our city logo, but it was a lot of fun. So I think it was a great success, and thank you for all your work. I did mention earlier I will not be here next week. I am disappointed because I know it's going to be an important meeting, and I will do my best to participate from afar, but I will be with my family celebrating a 60th and a 90th birthday. So it's an important trip. I do also want to remind everyone, I know I've talked about this a couple times, but at the Clear Creek Makerspace, we are in the last week of a 6-week Math and Make program. I have spent the last week, all of last week and this week, teaching high school kids welding, and wow, I thought I appreciated teachers before this experience, and now I give them everything they want. But it has been an amazing program. The students are making amazing things. They're doing really great projects. They're learning not only skills, but they're learning about respect and partnership and leaving spaces better than they find them, and how to take concepts and apply them into the world. And I've just seen some really great personalities really come out as people are getting confident on machines. It's been a great experience. They are having a final presentation on Friday at 5 at the Makerspace. I wish I could be there, but I ask any of you to please come. I sent an invitation to council and Mayor Stites. I told them that I invited city council, and they were like amazed that if anyone would be interested. So if anyone can make it, please go. It's going to be amazing. 5 o'clock on Friday. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Snell.
Thank you, Mayor. And I am also just want to echo everyone's sentiments about Engage Wheat Ridge. This was a really fun month. It was a lot of work, but it was really fun work. And to kind of echo what Counselor Martell said specifically. We had folks that came, we had different folks at each of our events, but we had a small group of folks that came to every event that we had. And that says a lot about just the level of engagement and how much folks care about where they live and care about engaging with us and with the city at large. And so I was really grateful to have that time. But I want to just say a special thank you to staff for all of the work that you put into this, because your schedules are already so full. And then for me to email Kent and say, hey, can you drop by our coffee? You know, and he's probably got a calendar that's like several pages just for the one day. And he made time to come to our coffee event and answered some great questions, great discussion. Alex Rose was at several of our events. Oh, yeah. Oh, Kent was actually mentioned in the thank you note. Even more. It was really impactful. And Alex, for all of his time, and he led a tour for us of the police department for anyone who wanted to join. And it was just really above and beyond. Once again, our staff are just amazing. And so I want to say a thank you to them. And then as we look into August, Counselor Martell and I are getting back to our office hours, and we have decided for the month of August, we're still working out some details because we did get some feedback. We're going to do some more afternoon office hours so that folks who are working during the day can come. Totally makes sense. But for our first office hours in August, they will be at Ann's Pie Cafe. That's August 4th, 9 to 11 a.m. And then we'll have more info on what's coming next. I did also want to just mention that next, also on August 4th, is National Night Out. And I just wanted to mention that's always a great time. Our police department just does an amazing job. And I know that there's always a little bit, I think by now the neighbors know, but when you hear a lot of sirens from this area on that day for that period of time, it's nothing's wrong. It's just the kids getting to be in the police vehicles and use the siren. But a lot of fun. So I hope to see y'all there on the 4th. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully they'll have the new command vehicle there and get to use the RV. Yeah, cool. Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor. The first thing is Jeffco EDC. We had our new president and CEO, Cami Welch. We are really, really lucky to have her on board. She was the former Arvada Chamber of Commerce, and she has some really big visions of trying to pull everybody together from all the different communities, different Chamber of Commerces, looking at the high level picture all the way down to helping the small businesses, and really thinking what our, we have some really big strengths, the bioscience, the aerospace, and so I'm really looking forward to the vision and moving Jefferson County along. I think it's really gonna raise everybody up, and we're all really excited. I'm just not as excited right now because I'm a little tired. It's been long, but I think the world of Cami, so that'll be exciting. And then the Ives groundbreaking phase 2. We have such a great group of leaders, council members, mayor, the county commissioners, so supportive of having that out there, and you could really see it, how much everybody really cares about having that project and what it's going to be, and the seeing the vision of what the architecture and the siting, the placement. This is really going to be a really nice project, really great proximity to the services that Weavers offers with the biking, the busing, places to work, and we're really lucky to have that. So that was Friday, and then Saturday we had. I won't talk too much about it, but on Hopper Hollow, I just want to point out that the PD showed up. We had several police officers show up. Alex was there and had some good conversations. The other thing that kind of stuck out was I think it was Officer DeBrine. He had noticed that there was a unhoused person laying down the bench, and it was really hot out, and he made went out of his way to go take some water to that individual and make sure that they got in the shade, you know, and I thought, like, this says a lot about our PD, you know, that they're really caring. But we had a lot of good, I thought we had a good turnout. And then after that, I went to the Peaches and Honey Festival, got some honey and some peaches, and look forward to, you know, a second year. So thank you.
Thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem Holden.
All right, a couple of things. So I'll start with the uninteresting stuff. So I want to thank folks. I know we're all trying to get into the practice of giving the updates from our boards and commissions that we serve on. I appreciate folks bringing those forward. As Council Member Wood mentioned, we did have a Dr. Cog board meeting a couple weeks ago, and the two big things to share. One is there's a building policy collaborative roadmap that is coming out of Dr. Cog. There'll be sort of more contextual opportunity to take a look at it and what it means this fall when we actually have a study session around building efficiency. But it is a voluntary sort of policy think tank opt-in for how we can, as a region, improve our building efficiency. Building emissions are one of the number one contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. So we have received grant funding to, you know, evaluate our own policies. So that will be coming back this fall in a more Wheat Ridge specific context. And then Dr. Cog for the last, I think, year and a half has been working on a regional housing strategy, which has identified the need for 500,000 homes needed by 2050 in the Denver, in the Dr. Cog region. And those are across all price points. So what they are recommending is a regional partnership. So there's two, I think they're calling it regional housing something, too many acronyms in here. But there's going to be sort of a regional partnership that's more high level ideas exchange so that we have better access to, you know, understanding what are like the things that are working regionally so that we're not operating in silos as much. And then they're looking at standing up sub-regional collaboratives that would actually look at better sharing resources and agreements like within subregions. So that's getting developed, and that proposed plan will come back later this year. So I will bring that back when that comes. Then just a couple of administrative things before I talk about Engage Wheat Ridge. But just a reminder, colleagues, we need to pick a council partner award for the upcoming business awards. So I will send an email, but what I need you guys to do is send me any suggested names that you have in the next couple of days. I'll look and see if there's some overlap, and then I will get back out with a suggested person or organization. And just a reminder that this is a person or an organization that really has been a significant partner in helping us achieve our goals and priorities, whether it's economic development, housing, community engagement. So really just be thinking about those partners. Again, it can be a person. I've won it when I was just a person. I'm still a person. That hasn't changed. So anyway, so just be thinking about that, and please send me any names or organizations you have, and I will work with that and then get back to you with what seems like the best outcome of that. And then the pool party is on Thursday, and we don't have a ton of RSVPs for that. So first of all, I need us to RSVP. If you're planning on being at the pool party, please RSVP so we've got a head count. But if you've got your list of folks from Engage Wheat Ridge, send them a nudge, let them know, you know, we're gonna have Roll and Smoke Barbecue, and can never remember the name of the Dobbs. Is that what it's called? Dops, yep. Is going to be there. It's going to be fun for adults and kids of all ages. So please feel free to ping your people again. And if you've got any constituents who are really engaged that didn't make it, you know, feel free to invite any of your community leaders to join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then my last thing, so yeah, Engage Wheat Ridge has been a very busy month. I've been doing our District 2 pop-ups, and then the mayor and I have been working on Thursday morning on the Clear Creek. And, you know, despite the heat, it's been a hot month. The conversations have just been so helpful and so appreciated by our constituents. I mean, people are just so grateful that we're meeting them in in the parks, and we're meeting them where they are, and we're being accessible. And so I think just the availability and accessibility of all of us has really meant a lot to our constituents. I know I would not feel as much confidence navigating this ballot question without the conversations I've had in the last month. I have a much deeper understanding. And Scott and I, Councilmember Ohm and I, elected to do ours in parks. And so we really had an opportunity to sort of ambush people who weren't expecting to attend a meeting. But we really were able to get perspectives of people who aren't typically engaged or paying attention. And I found that really, really helpful because they wanted to have the conversation. So anyway, none of that could have happened without staff who knocked it out of the park, just really supporting this idea that came together, I think, pretty quickly. And it was, I don't think I realized what a big idea it was until we were about halfway through the month. So just staff did an incredible job of making that happen and making us look good as we were, setting up tables in 90-degree heat. But and I really want to call it the PD because they attended our events, they rode bikes with us, and they were, kind and generous to our community members who had a lot of important questions for them. So I want to thank all of you guys. It's just been really fun to try and keep up with you this month. And we still have one more walk with us on Thursday morning for anyone who wants to join us, 7:30 at the Youngfield Trailhead. We'll be there, and we don't walk slow, but we don't walk fast.
We walk at the right speed.
We walk at the just right speed. So that's what I got. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Yes, it's been an amazing month, and I do want to thank staff, and I want to thank all the counselors, Mayor Pro Tem Holteen and I, kind of threw this idea at everybody, and everybody, not sure how everybody would respond, and everybody actually bought into it and ran with it, and I know that that's our first annual one, and it's going to be, I hope, something that we continue and make a tradition because I think it's been very successful. And I think given us a lot of context when we look at numbers from polling and stuff like that, that there are actual people in the community that actually do feel that way, and there is context to that polling. So I want to thank everybody, including the counselors and the community members who participated in City Council 101 last week. Alex Rose gave us a fantastic behind-the-scenes tour of the police station, such as it is. If you're a female officer, I don't even know how, you got to do shifts and shift your shifts so that you can actually get dressed. And I think even after going behind the scenes, there were so many departments we didn't get to see because they are not in this building, including most of Mr. Goff's staff is not in this building. So many things to not see here is pretty impressive. So thank you to everybody who's come and walk with us on Thursday mornings, and to the District 3 meetings that I've attended. Conversations have been lively, and there's been some good debates and some very good questions. And I know for some, we've been able to get the answers that they needed, and others we're still working on it, and we'll keep working. And to everybody from that District 3 meeting that was concerned about Color Strand the other day, I think moving forward with Wilmore Davis, the way that this process is unfolded should give them a lot of hope for Color Strand as well. So thank you to everybody who was involved in that. The Ives groundbreaking was fantastic the other day. It was great to see the county commissioners really come in and support what we're doing here in Wheat Ridge. I know they're a part of that, but we're doing it here in Wheat Ridge, and while the county is a part of that, we're living it, and it's really cool to see what Foothills Regional Housing is doing and all the huge impacts they're making on our community in that corner specifically, because especially after the Wadsworth acquisition, that could have been a very ugly corner, and the retail and stuff that could have gone there just was not going to be a thing. So this has been a really huge win for the city. We do have the pool party on Thursday. We do have the final walk with the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem on Thursday morning at 7:30. So hopefully we'll see everybody there for that. August 3rd is our next study session. We will be here. And it sounds like that study session just got a little bit busier.
and we got a couple more things added to it. So, so make sure you guys get a good rest for that one as well, I think. And then National Night Out is coming up on August 4th. And so if you're interested in interacting with our police officers, I believe I heard a rumor that there might be some behind the scenes tours of the police station going on that night as well. So if you have the opportunity, come and see it. And as always, if you can find it and buy it in Wheat Ridge. We will see you next week. Thank you very much.